What if you called 911 and nobody came? It's the one number every American is taught to trust, the lifeline in our darkest moments. But what if that line went dead? Not because the phone network failed, but because the system on the other end has already collapsed. Right now, as you're watching this, millions of Americans are living in a terrifying new reality where dialing 911 is a gamble, a roll of the dice with life and death. We're not talking about a natural disaster or a war zone. We're talking about quiet, rural towns and even sprawling suburban neighborhoods across the United States. A silent crisis is unfolding, a systemic breakdown that the media is not covering and your politicians are not talking about. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about safety and security in this country. The statistics are staggering. A recent internal analysis from the National EMS Advisory Council, leaked to us by a source who fears for their job, shows that in some parts of America, the average wait time for an ambulance has surpassed 30 minutes. In critical cardiac events, survival rates drop by 10% for every minute that passes. You do the math. This isn't a future problem. This is happening right now. And it's about to get much, much worse. This isn't just about a few underfunded towns or some isolated incidents. This is a symptom of a much larger disease infecting the core of our nation. It's the canary in the coal mine for a full-scale infrastructure collapse. For decades, we were told we were the greatest nation on earth. With unparalleled services and capabilities, we poured trillions into foreign wars and international projects, while the very systems that keep us alive at home were left to rust and decay. The problem is a three-headed monster, a catastrophic funding crisis, a mass exodus of trained paramedics, and the silent closure of rural hospitals. First, the funding. Many local emergency medical services, or EMS, are funded by a patchwork of local taxes and billing private insurance. As local economies shrink and the population gets older and poorer, that funding has evaporated. The result? A 2023 internal FEMA briefing, designated for official use only, projected a 40% collapse of rural EMS agencies by 2028 if no federal intervention occurs. Second, the people. Paramedics and EMTs are leaving the profession in droves. They face incredible stress, low pay, and the constant trauma of being on the front lines of our nation's health crises, from overdoses to chronic illness. A survey by the American Paramedicine Institute found that nearly 1/3 of all paramedics are considering leaving the field in the next 2 years. What happens when there's no one left to drive the ambulance? Finally, the destinations. Over 140 rural hospitals have closed in the last decade, creating what experts call medical deserts. This means even if an ambulance does reach you, the nearest emergency room could be over an hour away. This is the brutal reality. The system isn't just bending, it's breaking, and the shockwaves are about to hit every single American, whether you live in a small town or a major city. This is the story of the Great American Collapse, told one failed 911 call at a time. Let's begin with our first state, a place where the glittering lights of a global tourist hub hide a terrifying reality. Number 1. Nevada. Most people think of Las Vegas, but 87% of Nevada is rural land. In counties like Elko or Humboldt, you're hundreds of miles from the nearest trauma center. We've obtained logs from one rural dispatch center showing average ambulance response times have climbed from 15 minutes to over 45 minutes in just 3 years. That's a 200% increase. The economic impact is devastating. With unreliable local services, wealthy residents are paying thousands for private air ambulance subscriptions, creating a two-tiered system of survival. For everyone else, it's a gamble. A rancher having a heart attack, a child with a severe allergic reaction. Their fate is decided by the clock, and the clock is ticking slower than ever. You won't believe what happens next. The strain isn't just in the countryside. The explosive growth around Las Vegas has stretched emergency services to their breaking point. A source inside the Clark County Fire Department told us they are now in a perpetual level 0 state, meaning no ambulances are available for the next call. It sounds unreal, but it's real. This brings us to our second state, deep in the heartland, where the crisis is hitting with brutal efficiency. Number 2, Arkansas. The problem here isn't just distance, it's a cascade of hospital closures that has turned entire regions into medical dead zones. In the last 5 years, Arkansas has seen 8 rural hospitals shut their doors for good. Now, when an ambulance picks up a patient in a town like Mena, they face a harrowing choice. Which hospital is even open? The numbers don't lie. Paramedics are reporting transport times of up to 90 minutes one way, effectively taking one ambulance out of service for 3 hours for a single call. Here's what they don't want you to know. Some private ambulance companies, which are paid per transport, are now refusing to service unprofitable rural routes, leaving entire communities with literally no one to call. This forces families to make an impossible choice. Try to drive a critically injured loved one themselves, risking further injury, or wait for a helicopter that may never come. The cost to the state's economy is projected to be over $300 million a year in lost productivity and increased healthcare costs. This is just the beginning. Now we move west to a state battling a perfect storm of budget cuts and a crumbling volunteer system. Number 3, Oklahoma. For generations, small towns across Oklahoma relied on volunteer fire departments and EMS crews. These were your neighbors, your friends, trained to help in a crisis. But that system has disintegrated. With younger generations moving to cities for work, the volunteer pool has dried up. A stunning report from the Oklahoma State Firefighters Association revealed that over 60 rural volunteer EMS services have become defunct since 2020. What fills the void? Nothing. We're talking about entire counties where, on any given Tuesday, there might be only one ambulance crew on duty to cover 900 square miles. But here's the twist. The state government, facing a budget shortfall, recently cut subsidies for rural emergency services by 12%. It's a death sentence delivered by spreadsheet. The personal impact is horrifying. Imagine your child has a severe asthma attack, and the dispatcher tells you the nearest ambulance is 50 miles away and already on another call. This isn't a hypothetical. It's happening every single day in the Sooner State. Let's travel north to a place of rugged beauty and even more rugged challenges. Number 4, Montana. They call it Big Sky Country for a reason. The distances are immense and the population is sparse and aging. This creates a logistical nightmare for emergency response. In eastern Montana, it's not uncommon for the local hospital to be a 3-hour drive away. The state's EMS system is on life support, heavily reliant on a few dedicated but overworked paramedics and a fleet of aging ambulances. A mechanic we spoke to on the condition of anonymity said over half the vehicles he services for rural counties should have been retired a decade ago. He sees them held together with duct tape and prayers. Here's the shocking part. Because of the vast distances, air ambulances are essential. But these services are often grounded due to weather, and their costs are astronomical. With a single flight often billing over $50,000, this has led to a surge in medical bankruptcies across the state. Montana's crisis shows how geography can become a fatal vulnerability when the infrastructure designed to conquer it fails completely. From the wide-open plains, we go to the winding mountain roads of Appalachia. Number 5, West Virginia. This state is at the epicenter of the opioid crisis, and it has shattered their emergency medical system. Paramedics here are not just responding to heart attacks and car accidents. They are frontline soldiers in a drug war, responding to multiple overdose calls a day. The burnout is unprecedented. We uncovered records showing that the average career span for a paramedic in the southern counties of West Virginia is now less than 5 years. They are fleeing the profession due to trauma and pay that barely clears minimum wage. This will shock you. Several counties, including McDowell and Mingo, have had to temporarily suspend 911 services on certain days because they simply have no staff to send. They are forced to rely on neighboring counties, which are already stretched thin. The state's difficult terrain compounds the problem, with winding, narrow roads that can turn a 10-mile trip into a 40-minute ordeal. The system is collapsing under the weight of a health crisis it was never designed to handle. Next, we head to the Deep South, where generational poverty has starved public services to the breaking point. Number 6, Mississippi. Mississippi has the highest poverty rate in the nation, and the state of its EMS system is a direct reflection of that. In the Mississippi Delta, one of the poorest regions in America, the situation is dire. A recent study by the Rural Health Research Center found that the average EMS response time in the Delta exceeds 25 minutes, more than double the national average. Why? The equipment is ancient, the ambulances are constantly breaking down, and the tax base is too small to fund adequate services. Here's what they don't want you to know. Some for-profit ambulance companies have been accused of cherry-picking calls, prioritizing transports from wealthier neighborhoods with better insurance coverage, while letting calls from poorer areas wait. It's a brutal form of medical redlining. The consequences are stark. Mississippi has one of the highest rates of death from trauma and stroke in the country, deaths that doctors say could have been prevented with faster emergency care. It is a life or death crisis fueled by economic despair. Now for a place of extremes, where the sheer scale of the environment makes every emergency a monumental challenge. Number 7, Alaska. If you think a 30-minute wait is bad, imagine waiting a day. In Alaska, that can be the reality. Many communities are not connected by roads at all. They rely entirely on planes or boats. The state's emergency response is a patchwork of brave pilots, local volunteers, and a handful of professional medics spread thin across an area more than twice the size of Texas. The clock is ticking, but here, the real enemy is the weather. A snowstorm, heavy fog, or high winds can ground all air traffic for days, effectively cutting off a whole town from any advanced medical care. What happens next? No one is ready for. The state's budget, heavily reliant on fluctuating oil prices, has seen repeated cuts to public health and safety. This has led to fewer state-funded medevac flights and older equipment. For the residents of the Alaskan bush, a broken leg or a bout of appendicitis can become a death sentence if the weather turns. This is America's final frontier, and its lifeline is being cut. From the far north, we travel to the far northeast. Number 8, Maine. Known for its rocky coastline and deep forests, Maine also has the oldest population in the United States. This graying of the state has put an incredible strain on its EMS system, which, like in Oklahoma, has historically relied on volunteers. As the population ages, the demand for emergency calls has skyrocketed, up 30% in the last decade alone. But the number of young, able-bodied volunteers has plummeted. We're seeing a situation where 70-year-old volunteers are trying to lift patients and respond to calls in the middle of the night. It is unsustainable. This will shock you. In Aroostook County, a massive, sparsely populated region known as the county, dispatchers have been forced to tell callers that no ambulance is available and they have no estimated time for when one might be. The economic impact is subtle, but insidious. Retirees who might have moved to Maine for its quiet lifestyle are now reconsidering, fearing they will be too far from help in an emergency. This threatens the state's tourism and retirement-based economy. Now to the sun-scorched Southwest, where a new type of emergency is pushing an already fragile system over the edge. Number 9. Arizona. The relentless heat is turning into a mass casualty event every summer. In Phoenix, heat-related emergency calls have doubled in 5 years, overwhelming city paramedics. But the real crisis is in the vast rural stretches of the state. On tribal lands and in small desert towns, the system is failing. The Tohono O'odham Nation, a reservation the size of Connecticut, is served by a skeleton crew of ambulances. Response times can easily exceed an hour under the blazing sun. Here's the twist. The border crisis has added another layer of extreme strain. EMS crews are frequently called to respond to medical emergencies involving migrants in remote, dangerous terrain, pulling resources away from local residents. It's a humanitarian crisis, crashing into an infrastructure crisis. The numbers don't lie. Arizona has one of the highest rates of ambulance deserts in the country, areas where you are more than 25 minutes from the nearest ambulance station. In a state where dehydration can kill in hours, 25 minutes is an eternity. Finally, we come to a state that embodies all of these tragic problems in one place. Number 10. New Mexico. From the impoverished colonias along the southern border to the isolated communities in the northern mountains, New Mexico's EMS system is in a state of critical failure. It suffers from the rural distances of Montana, the funding shortages of Mississippi, and the volunteer collapse of Oklahoma. A leaked report from the New Mexico Department of Health, which we've reviewed, paints a terrifying picture. It states that 15 of the state's 33 counties are operating with critically deficient emergency medical services. What does that mean? It means equipment failures are rampant, staffing levels are dangerously low, and response times are catastrophic. But here's the most shocking revelation of all. Because of low Medicaid reimbursement rates, some private ambulance services are on the verge of bankruptcy and are planning to cease operations entirely, potentially leaving over 100,000 New Mexicans with no 911 service whatsoever. It sounds unreal, but it's real. The state is facing the total privatization of suffering, where your ability to survive an emergency will depend entirely on your bank account. So what does this all mean? This isn't just a collection of 10 unfortunate stories. It is a portrait of a nation in decline. The failure of our emergency medical services is a red alert, a clear and present danger to our national security. A nation that cannot protect its citizens from a heart attack at home is a nation that has lost its way. This cascade of failure will not stay confined to rural areas. As these systems collapse, the strain will shift to the cities, which are already struggling. We will see a future of medical rationing, where the severity of your emergency is weighed against the availability of a single ambulance. Imagine a future where your health insurance premium includes a response zone clause, where living in the wrong zip code means you are on your own. This is the creation of a two-tiered society, one for those who can afford private medevac services and concierge doctors, and another for the rest of us, left to fend for ourselves. The pessimistic scenario is a complete fragmentation of our national healthcare system, where states and even individual counties are left to survive or fail on their own. The optimistic scenario? It requires a massive nationwide mobilization, an investment in our internal infrastructure on the scale of the New Deal. It requires us to admit that we are in a crisis. The clock is ticking. The first step is to wake up, to understand that the foundation you thought was solid is cracking beneath your feet. We have to stop looking overseas for monsters to destroy and start rebuilding the systems that keep us alive right here at home. This isn't a political issue, it's a survival issue. Are you living in one of these ambulance deserts? Let us know in the comments below what you're seeing in your community. You are our eyes and ears on the ground. If this video shocked you, if it opened your eyes, you need to share it. Send it to your friends, your family, your local representatives. Force them to confront this reality. This information is too important to be ignored. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. We are tracking this collapse in real time. And in our next video, we will expose the 3 corporations that are profiting from this crisis. You need to stay informed. You need to be prepared. Because the next time you hear a siren, you'll have to wonder, is it coming for me or is it already too late?